This is Red, the protagonist of Pokemon Red, Green, Blue, and Yellow, as he appears in the Generation 2 games as a secret boss. Red is a trainer who presents a serious battle challenge, as he has some of the highest level Pokemon in the entire franchise on his team. I'm sure you have memories of getting destroyed by his level 82 Snorlax or his level 88 Pikachu. His team in Gold, Silver, Crystal consists of Pikachu, the 3 Kanto starters, Espeon, and Snorlax, and then in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, he swaps out his Espeon for a Lapras. Now, it's obviously just fun and exciting to be able to battle a past protagonist from the Pokemon series, but I think it's particularly cool that all the Pokemon he uses are gifts from the games that he's in. In Yellow version, your starter is Pikachu, and then you can receive Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle in and near Cerulean and Vermilion City. There are 2 Snorlaxes that you'll encounter throughout the game, and Eevee and Lapras are both gift Pokemon that you can receive in Celadon City's Hotel and Saffron City's Silphco building, respectively. I always thought it was neat to see how his teams were made of important Pokemon that you received during his games, and this has always left me wondering what it would look like for future protagonists to get this treatment too. So, in this video, we'll be looking at all of the in-game protagonists from Pokemon and turning them into secret final bosses that will appear in the franchise's next game, just like Red appears in the Generation 2 games. Some ground rules I'm going to be making for these teams will be the following. Number 1, most of the Pokemon games have multiple protagonists, usually a male and female character. For most of these pairs, I'll be making just one team. We can imagine that maybe the gender of the boss you fight is based off the gender of the player character you choose, either the same or the opposite. Number 2, while I could give each secret final boss all 3 starters from their game, I think that wouldn't make for a great video, so instead I'll pick a starter based on the starter that the player chooses and then fill the rest of the team out from there. Number 3, I'm not going to restrict myself to Pokemon that were introduced in the protagonist region, but they do just need to make sense for a playthrough of that region. I'll try to follow Red's suit and take some Pokemon that are mostly starters, gift Pokemon, or important static encounters. In some cases, I'll use less important static encounters, like ones that appear on certain days of the week, in-game trade Pokemon, and then finally, if I don't have a lot of great options, I might just pick some iconic Pokemon from that region. I won't be using a lot of legendaries, mythicals, paradox Pokemon, or ultra beasts, but of course there's always going to be some exceptions. And finally, number 4, I'm going to try to replicate Red's team here by not using very many held items or any hidden abilities, unless of course receiving a hidden ability Pokemon is something that happens in that game. With all that, let's get into the video. So first up, we'll be looking at the protagonists Ethan, Lyra, and Kris from the Generation 2 games and remakes. We'll make them a team for Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, and then also a team for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So, we'll start their team off with the starter that is strong against the players. From there, I think an Umbreon would make a lot of sense for this team. It could be evolved from the Eevee given to the player in Ecruteak City by Bill. This would also give us some parity with Red's team since he used an Espeon in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Next, I think I'll pick Togetic or Togekiss since you can get a Togepi egg in Violet City. After that, we'll use Steelix, evolved from the in-game trade Onix using the metal coat that you get on the SS Aqua. And then, we'll of course have to end the team with a red Gyarados from the Lake of Rage and a Dragonite from the Dragon's Den. If this rematch is happening during Generation 6, I think we could give Steelix a Megastone. Some honorable mentions for this team would be the Sudowoodo from Route 36, a host of Pokemon that could have been hatched from the Odd Egg, and a couple of starters made available in the Heart Gold and Soul Silver postgame. Then finally, there's Hitmontop, which could have been evolved from the Tyrogue that Kaio gives you in Mount Mortar. So to summarize, here are the 2 teams for Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I like them overall, as they both feel very Johto. Moving on to our next protagonists, we have Brendan and May from Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, and their remakes. This battle will occur in Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, and then the BDSP remix. Obviously, we'll set them up with either Sceptile, Blaziken, or Swampert, whichever one is strong against the starter that the player has chosen. The Generation 3 games don't have as many gift or in-game event Pokemon as the Johto games do, and some of the gift Pokemon that do exist just aren't very good. So, we might need to get a little creative here. First, we'll give them both a Cradily and Armaldo, the 2 fossil Pokemon in the Hoenn region. During the story of Emerald, you can actually get both of these fossils, but one of them only after defeating the champion, in the Desert Underpass. From there, we could then also give them a Camerupt and Sharpedo, since those are gifts from Team Aqua and Magagrunts that are in the Battle Resort in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Finally, we'll of course give them a Metagross evolved from that gift Beldum that Steven gives them after defeating the main story of the game. Runner-ups for this team that I didn't use were some of the weaker ones, such as the gift Castform and Wobbuffet evolved from that Wynot egg in Lava Ridge Town. We could have also given them a Pop or Rockstar Pikachu from Oris, a Togepi egg, also given in Oris, or one of the many starters given in the postgame, but I wanted to try to stay away from overlaps where I could. So while this team might not look exactly like your team would if you played through these games, they at least really scream Hoenn. Next, we'll head into Generation 4 featuring Lucas and Dawn. Their secret final boss battle will be found in Pokemon Black and White, having theirs be one of the only teams that won't have access to the Fairy type. As usual, we'll start them off with the starter that is strong against the players. Then, the Spiritomb that can be caught after obtaining the Odd Keystone, a Glaceon evolved from the gift Eevee, a Lucario evolved from the gift Riolu, and then a Porygon Z, which is evolved from the Porygon you can get in Veilstone City in Platinum. Finally, I think it'd be cool to give them either a Rotom Mow, Heat, or Wash to cover their starter's weakness. Rotom is of course catchable in the old Chateau, and since this battle is happening in Generation 5, it can now take advantage of its form-unique typings, which were not present in Generation 4. Some honorable mentions for this generation are the Togepi Egg from Cynthia, a Drifblim from Valley Windworks, and the iconic Gen 4 playthrough Pokemon like Staraptor, Luxray, and Floatzel. So I don't think this team really looks like your average Gen 4 playthrough, but I do think it does a good job of showcasing some of the interesting Pokemon that Gen 4 has to offer. Speaking of which, if you like the content that this channel has to offer, hit the subscribe button for more content like it. Next, we'll make teams for the first set of protagonists from Generation 5, Hilbert and Hilda. These two protagonists will appear in Black and White 2, really throwing back to the feeling of fighting Red in the Johto postgame. We'll start off their team with either a Superior, Emboar, or Samurott to be stronger than the players, and then we'll pick either Simisage, Simisear, or Simipour to match the type of the player's starter Pokemon, since that would be the one that Hilbert or Hilda got to match their starter. We'll then give them the hidden ability Musharna that can be caught in the Dream Yard on Fridays after beating the main story, a Volcarona that could have either been caught in Relic Castle or trained up from our Larvesta egg, a Zen mode Darmanitan from the Desert Resort, and finally, we'll have this team be an outlier and give Hilbert or Hilda either Zekrom or Reshiram, whichever one the player doesn't have. This works out really well, as technically in Black and White 2, you catch N's legendary, and Hilbert or Hilda's is still out there somewhere. Perhaps even after this battle, Hilbert or Hilda could give you that legendary. Some runner-ups for this team would be the Event Zorua or Zoroark, and the Gen 5 Fossil Pokemon. I like this team a lot, especially since it uses only Gen 5 Pokemon, which is what the Gen 5 games were kind of known for. Next, we'll only move up half a generation and use the protagonists from Black and White 2, Nate and Rosa. We'll place them in Pokemon X and Y. We'll start them off with the Unova starter that is strong against the player's starter. We'll also give them N Zoroark, which is given to them in Driftvale City. We'll give them a hidden ability Sawsbuck that they receive at the Weather Institute, the shiny Haxorus from the Nature Preserve. Then, to finish up their teams, we'll turn to the Hidden Grottos. First, we'll give them a hidden ability Sinnoh, which is that guaranteed first Hidden Grotto Pokemon. And then we'll give them a hidden ability Liepard, which has a chance of spawning after you catch or defeat the Minccino. Some runner-ups for this, of course, would be the Gen 5 Fossil Pokemon, a Gyarados evolved from the Magikarp purchasable on Marvelous Bridge, Blissey evolved from the Happiny Egg in Nacrene City, and the shiny Garchomp or Dragonite that's a gift from Benga, but I didn't want to double up on shiny dragons. So this team also ended up just being Gen 5 Pokemon, which I guess could be considered a flaw since Black and White 2 brought the National Dex back into the story, but it does do a good job of showcasing hidden abilities, which were introduced in Gen 5. For our Gen 6 reps, we have Calem and Serena, who will appear in Sun, Moon, and Ultra Sun and Moon. We'll start Calem and Serena with the Gen 6 starter that beats the player's starter, and then we'll also give them a Gen 1 starter to cover their original starter's weakness. I know it's a bit unusual to give them a starter from another generation, but since it's a mandatory gift Pokemon, I feel like it has to be included. We'll keep it a little more fresh than the ones on Red's team by Mega Evolving it in the Ultra games, and we'll choose which Mega Evolution of Charizard to use depending on whether we're in Sun or Moon. We'll then give them the gift Lucario from Karina. From there, there's really not a lot of Gen 6 Pokemon that are important to the story, and a lot of static encounters in the game hail from other regions. I don't want to have too many copies from previous Secret Final Boss teams, so in my opinion, we need to just get creative moving forward. I think we'll go ahead and give the player a Sylveon since that just makes sense, being that generation's new evolution, a Go-Goat since it's one of the Ride Pokemon, and then we'll give them an Aegislash since it's one of the most iconic Pokemon from Kalos. Some runner-ups for this team would be the Rhyhorn and Mamoswine Ride Pokemon, and the Gen 6 Fossils. I like this team overall. I know there's some repeats from other teams, but if you were playing the games in series order, it might still been a while since you've seen them, so I think it should be fine. It's also just really representative of what a Gen 6 playthrough is like. Next, we'll go over Elio and Selene, the Gen 7 protagonists. Their boss fight will be in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Fair warning, from this point onward, it becomes a lot harder to find really iconic Pokemon that are more or less guaranteed to be given to the player. We'll start off Elio and Selene with a Gen 7 starter, whichever one beats the player starter, and then we'll give them a Silvally and Naganadel, as both of these are given to the player after defeating the Elite Four or Ultra Necrozma. From there, we can give them an Alolan Raichu with the move Surf, as that's a reward for achieving a high score on all 4 Mantine Surf courses. A Mudsdale, as it's the only ride Pokemon that hails from Alola, and then finally, we'll give them a totem-sized Kommo-o. Runner-ups for these teams would be our usual suspects of Eevee and Porygon, but then also the Gift Aerodactyl. It's a pretty solid team overall, and I like how it covers the concepts of Ultra Beasts, regional variants, ride Pokemon, and totem Pokemon. Moving up one more generation, we have Victor and Gloria from Sword and Shield. These battles will appear in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We'll begin the team with the starter that is strong against the players. Then we'll give them the Toxtricity received on Route 5. We'll give them the amped version since the gym leader Rhyme uses the low-key version. Next, we'll give them the in-game trade Duraludon, but we'll not evolve it since Archaludon didn't come out until the Scarlet and Violet DLC. We'll give them Dracovish since it's probably one of the most iconic fossil Pokemon in Gen 8. And a Galarian Slowbro, evolved from the Slowpoke you meet when starting the DLC. Lastly, we'll just give them the iconic Gen 8 Pokemon, Corviknight. Some runner-ups would be the Wailord, found in the DLC, the Spiritomb, found in the Crown Tundra, and would it really be a Pokemon game if we didn't get a Gift Porygon? So, I don't know if I can say this team is represented by a bunch of really memorable moments in the game, but they're at least made up of a lot of iconic Pokemon from Gen 8. And finally, we have Florian and Juliana, the protagonists from Gen 9. This battle could be housed in Gen 10, whatever those Pokemon games will be called. We'll start their team off with a Gen 9 starter Pokemon, and then we'll give them the Blood Moon Ursaluna, the Titan Tatsugiri, since it's the highest level Titan, a Berserker, evolved from the Galarian Meowth, given to you by Salvatore, a Shiny Snorlax, evolved from the Shiny Munchlax, given to you in the Teal Mask DLC, and then the traded Paldean Tauros from Nemona in the Indigo Disc DLC. Honorable mentions for this battle are of course some of the other trade Pokemon from the BB League Club room, other Titan Pokemon, and the Gift, Hisui, and Growlithe from Perrin. Out of all the teams we've made so far, this one seems the most random to me. However, I think a lot of that is because Pokemon doesn't really do as many unique gift or in-game event Pokemon as they used to. Now, if you've played a few Pokemon games, you might know I've been leaving out some protagonists. So, we'll have some bonus teams, the first being Chase and Elaine from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. They could appear in the next Let's Go game if we ever get one. We'll start the teams off with either a Pikachu or Eevee. We'll give Chase the Pikachu and Elaine the Eevee, just since they're usually drawn with those Pokemon. I know it's not all the times, but I gotta pick something. Then, we'll go with those assignments and give Chase a Persian and Elaine an Arcanine, since you can get those version exclusives in the Pokemon Fan Club in Vermilion City. We'll then give Chase a Hitmonlee and Elaine a Hitmonchan, of course being obtained in the Fighting Dojo in Saffron City, and then Chase will get an Omastar and Elaine will get a Kabutops. For the last 2 spots, we'll still want to try and stay different from Red's team, so I think we'll go with a Gyarados from the Magikarp purchasable outside of Mount Moon, and then it'd be really interesting to give them a Melmetal, as a nod to their connection to Pokemon Go. The situation with the starter Pokemon here really kind of forced us to have to make 2 teams, but I think they both look really good. And our last bonus team will be pretty quick. We'll talk about Ray and Akari from Legends Arceus. Their battle could of course appear in Legends ZA. We'll give them a pretty simple team, starting them off with the starter that is strong against the players, and then we'll move into the 5 ride Pokemon. Those are Weirdeer, Ursaluna, Basculegion, Sneasler, and Hisuian Braviary. We could have gone with all the boss Pokemon from this game, but I think the rides make more sense. So there you have it. Feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you think I could have changed, or if there are any protagonists from the side games you'd like to see. If you liked this video, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. Every little metric or number helps me out a ton, and I'm so grateful for all of y'all who have been watching my stuff for a while now. The most helpful thing you could do is to watch another one of my videos right after this one, as it would really help me out with the algorithm. Here's one YouTube thinks you'll like. Anyways, catch y'all in the next video.